Welcome to the starting lineup for round 9 in MLS Fantasy with Andrew Wiebe. I'm Jason Saghini. We're here to give you all the advice ahead of this weekend's action. But first, Andrew wants to report on what happened in last week's matchup.
Well, I advised you to captain Olave. I did it myself, and I paid Jason with that 101-88 victory. Not good for me, probably not good for you. I heard from you on Twitter, but congratulations, Jason. Until next time.
As well as Andrew and I do at this game, we have to give credit to our own Chris Benton here at MLS Digital, who's the #1 player overall in the game for April. So we'll have to get some advice from him in the coming weeks. From the #1 player to the #1 league, the Extra Time Radio League is the #1 league in the game right now, Andrew. Tell them why.
Well, it's probably because we're giving you free stuff for winning. Of course, those weekly winners getting that MLS Live subscription, but we've just nailed down the grand prize for whoever wins the overall league at the end of this season. You're going to get your choice of an MLS scarf, your choice of an MLS jersey, an Adidas match ball, as well as 2014 subscription to MLS Live, a cameo on Extra Time Radio, and last, but certainly not least, a signed copy of 50 Shades of Grey by Simon Borg and his mother-in-law. A big haul there.
All right, a lot going on there. Join the Extra Time Radio League. We're going to move on to get to the show, and we have to talk about the poll that we put up in midweek. We asked if you had $10 million to spend on a midfielder, who would you spend it on? Graham Zusi, David Ferreira, Landon Donovan, Brad Davis, and the answer was?
Well, for me, this one's pretty personal. It's Graham Zusi. I've had him all year. He is the best player in fantasy. 8+ points in 5 of 7 starts. I actually dropped Brad Davis in order to pick up Landon Donovan this week. I think there's a big risk reward with him, but for sure it is Graham Zusi.
All right, Donovan was second in that poll. As we move on to the fan questions for this week, Jacob Beckett asks, what teams over the next couple of weeks have the best schedule coming up?
Well, we're going back to Sporting Kansas City. They are certainly the team with the best fixtures coming up. 3 straight home games, Portland, Chivas USA, and Seattle. Then they go to Houston, but that's part of a double feature in round 11. You have to expect that they'll rack up the points through that stretch.
All right, maybe not as good of a schedule, but I'll give you 2 other teams to look at, the San Jose Earthquakes and the Montreal Impact. I like their schedule, again, leading into that double feature week in week 11.
And one thing to remember, Philadelphia and LA may not have the double in 11, but they do in 12, and they're the only teams that have that. So look to construct your roster to take advantage of both of those weeks.
All right, Kelly Douglas asked the next question. And the question is, can you suggest a midfielder and a forward for under $7 million? Looking for bargains, already has Deshaun Brown and Andrew Jacobson.
Well, we'll get to the forwards in a second, but my midfielder, a guy that I picked up this week, is Amobi Okugo. He's technically a defender, but right now slots to that midfielder in Fantasy Manager here. $6.4 million, a bargain there. He gets 5.5 points on average per start. That's great production for a guy at that price.
All right, the midfielder I'm taking, Davy Arnaud. Again, I said I like Montreal's schedule coming up. I think Davy Arnaud, obviously a part of that counter-attacking style. He can pick you up some points. And when you look at the forwards, I think Andrew and I both agree on this. Not a lot of forwards other than Deshaun Brown under that threshold. Dominic Aduro at 7, though, could be a player you can put on your team.
Yeah, it's the thing with him is, though, it's feast or famine. If he scores a goal, you are going to reap the rewards. But if he doesn't, you're looking at 1 or 2 points maximum.
All right, moving on. Armin B says, I've lost faith in Chris Wondolowski. Who should I pick up when I drop him? I'm going to tell you, my advice is don't drop him. This San Jose Earthquakes team, again, has a good schedule coming up. At Chivas USA, home to Montreal, a double week, home to Toronto, at Seattle, and then home to Colorado. That's not a bad schedule right there when you look at it. And remember, Chris Wondolowski, he got Steven Lenhart back. Now he's getting Chavez back, Salinas back, Beitashour back. This team is starting to look like the Quakes from last year. Remember what Chris Wondolowski did last year.
And look, if you're dead set on getting rid of Wondolowski, I would say go with Claudio Bielor at $9.3 million. That gives you $1 million to work with, and we talked about their schedule. You have to expect at home he's going to find opportunities to finish, especially with Graham Zusi feeding him.
All right, Off the Woodwork took our advice last week, filled up on New York and Sporting Kansas City players. Unfortunately for him, Olave was one of them. But he says, who am I going to drop now? I have these 6 players from New York and Kansas City. Who should I drop? Who should I pick up?
Well, I would say don't be too hasty to drop any of these guys. You look at their schedules coming up, they're good. All of these guys you can expect to produce. But I would say round 11 is a time to start thinking about that. Henry and Olave, 2 guys that you have to think probably won't go to New England and play on that turf in the second of the double fixture. So that's a time to start thinking about it. For now, though, personally, I'm sticking with all those guys myself.
Okay, a final question coming in from Twitter says, currently I have Thierry Henry and Ryan Johnson. If I'm going to drop one of them, which should I drop?
Now, this was an easy one. You were dropping Ryan Johnson. Thierry Henry has been an absolute monster against Toronto and Columbus. Those games may be on the road, but they're both on grass. And look at what he's done in those games. 9 starts against these two teams in his MLS career, 7 goals, 6 assists. That is massive production. And if you do drop Ryan Johnson, a couple options for you. If you got the .2 floating around, go get Jack McInerney. We've been talking about it for weeks. I've been reaping the rewards. You should be too. And if you don't have the .2, perhaps his partner, Connor Casey, he's starting to come around. And then Jairo Arrieta, I really think he's going to be back in that Crew lineup.
Well, we have a bunch of questions left, and we want to get to them all, so it's time for the lightning round. And we start with MLS in St. Louis saying, which St. Louis player should I have, Will Bruin or Brad Davis?
Will Bruin. Davis limped off the field last week, and I dropped him as well. Moving on, Alex all day long. Time to jump on the Donovan bus?
Too early to jump on the bus. Tough schedule coming up in the near term. Macabre says, Higuain or Henry?
We've already talked about this one. Henry is the man to go with.
Michael Drickle says, Jack Mack, or do I stick with Robert Earnshaw over the next few weeks?
Jack Mack for sure. Earnshaw may earn, but Jack Mack is red hot. Justin Bilbright asked, does it ever make sense to sell a guy like Aurelien Collin? I've had him since week 1. Big profit there, but I lose so many points.
There are probably some guys it makes sense to sell. Colin is not one of them. Keep him on your team. He is a huge point getter in fantasy. That's all we have for the starting lineup this week. Remember to tweet your questions to @MLS Fantasy on Twitter. Also follow Andrew and I on Twitter. And hey, if you're playing 3-Goal Monty, don't forget to pick your goal scorers. Andrew, have you done it yet?
I've got the hat trick. Still waiting on yours?
I have not got a hat trick yet. Starting lineup will be back on Wednesday of next week. There's a Thursday night game. That's all we have for this week. Good luck this weekend, everyone.